Okay, so thank you for coming to our presentation today. I'm Raina Heaton at the University of Oklahoma. I'm also the curator for the Native American Languages Collection, and this is Kavon Hooshiar from the University of Hawaii at Manoa, and also MPI. We're talking today about some development work that we've been doing, where we have been engaging with communities, mostly in the planning stages of our digital development, so trying to really get that input early on. So first, a little bit of background on the Native American Languages Collection. We are sort of unique in that we are housed in a museum of natural history on the University of Oklahoma campus, which actually affords us a lot of really unique opportunities. Since most of you have probably not visited, just our physical spaces for you. This is the collection room with the manuscripts and reel-to-reels and things like that. This is our reading room and library, our digitization lab, and our recording studio. So the Native American Languages Collection is pretty new. It was founded in 2002 from about 130 different donations from linguists, tribal language programs, families, a lot of individual sources. It contains the usual types of language materials in about 1,300 languages. Got about 900 items cataloged at the moment, 12 terabytes of data, 160 linear feet of physical materials, and that doesn't include the about 15 pending collections that we're working on accessioning right now. We're a very public-facing collection, I would say. So before the pandemic, we were getting about 200 in-person visitors a year, and we provided roughly 2,000 copies of materials to people, both electronically and in person. And just to say that we are actively taking new donations, collaborating on Dell grants, things like that, which is how we've been growing rapidly ever since 2002. One of the things we're most proud of is the fact that we are really a community kind of organization, even though we're housed in a university. We have a lot of ongoing collaborations with our tribal partners and language programs in the area. So like the Wichita Language Project collections, Lenape Talking Dictionary, Choctaw Language School, Chickasaw Nation programs and individuals, that we really try to cultivate these broader relationships and enter into mutual curation agreements. Just a heads up also, if you haven't looked at us before, these are languages that we have primary materials on in case you're working on any of those. So that's wonderful, but we do have some issues that we've been trying to address through a series of grants. So the main one is the fact that we have no online access. You cannot download our materials from the web as you might expect to for other language archives. In fact, even the people that live here and work here and don't know that this collection exists. And that's partly because the catalog even is buried within about 4 layers of museum web pages. So we're really trying to do a better job of access and sharing. We also got our digital infrastructure in 2002, and it is now aging and dated, and we need to update both in terms of our technology and our workflows. But of course, this basically means that we've had to start from the ground up in redeveloping our infrastructure. So because we knew everything, and then we also have these wonderful longstanding collaborations with our local tribes and communities, we're uniquely positioned to build something better. And one of the ways that we're trying to do better is by taking advantage of the advances in software, which is a big opportunity. Kavon, like to tell us about software?
Right, so part of our plan is to use open source software, which is important for part of our user base as well as for funding organizations. And this allows us to accomplish a lot of the collections management functionality that archives provide. And also, we would like to develop our metadata schema so that it conforms to modern language archives. And we want to do so in collaboration with our users to make sure that it meets their needs. Using open source software also facilitates deploying persistent identifiers for collections and items, which is another standard for language archives. In terms of providing access, we'd like to do so using multiple content rendering. And by that, I mean providing user interfaces for different types of users and different user needs. For example, for depositors, they can use the infrastructure of the collection management system to make their deposit. And we can streamline workflows that we currently have for depositors and archivists. And then for end users trying to access the collections, we wanted to develop a website using iterative feedback from our user base, which means taking their feedback at various steps during the process of development. So in addition, some other benefits we get from using modern open source software packages are that we can have a repository management system with an API. So in this sense, we get the benefits of data management that are traditionally provided by language archives, but we also have an API that we can use to serve curated data to a user-friendly website for accessing collections. So this kind of compartmentalizes the functionality of what is normally thought of as the role of an archive, and also an access website that meets specific user needs. And this is extensible to other websites that want to focus on being portals of access to data. So for example, if a community has a website that they maintain and they would like to serve some portion of the data that they have archived on their website, we can use the API to arrange that. We can also have archive-friendly version control. And by that, I mean, we don't need a sophisticated system like Git to accomplish the kinds of version control we need for an archive. We just need a certain subset of those features. So we can have a system that maintains modifications to metadata in the case that new information arises for existing collections. And in the rare cases that files need to be modified, we can have a system that does so while explicitly maintaining each version so that it ensures preservation and citation of data. And finally, we can export metadata using standard formats like XML and JSON to facilitate repatriation. So given these goals, we've taken some first steps toward accomplishing them with the funding of 2 NEH grants, including an IMLS grant. So we have built new digital infrastructure, including upgrading our servers and developing a workflow for LTO backups. And we've also built a customized collection management system that the archive currently uses internally, which has allowed us to migrate our data to an SQL database system. We started building a website for accessing the collections, which will enable searching for collections and downloading files. And finally, we've done a lot of work cleaning up and preparing our existing collections and their metadata in order to conform to our developing metadata schema. Right, so having taken these steps, we were ready to solicit feedback from our user base as well as other archivists to potentially use to integrate into our design and development. So for our user base, we wanted to ask how they expect to navigate collections and what they like to use to search and browse those collections. And also, are there any features in other portals or archives that are particularly interesting to them? Also, do they have interest in allowing user submissions to contribute to collections, including in the case of metadata, as well as comments in general through the website? And if so, how would they like to see this happen? And finally, do they have an interest in co-curation? And do they have thoughts about how to engage with depositors and or tribal members in order to vet information provided by users? From other archivists, we asked what they like and dislike about their own data management systems and websites. And do they currently integrate user-generated content into their archive, and if so, how? Or if they do not, how they might like to see that happen. We also wanted to discuss the long-term sustainability of our developments, particularly in the case of increasing interest in co-curation and its implications for like decentralized control of managing collections. And finally, we wanted to discuss how to best allocate our limited resources in our development between the traditional role of archives of preservation and ingesting new materials, as well as the development of fancy new features that our users are interested in, which can be resource intensive, both in development and maintenance.
So to get this feedback, we held some workshops with a diverse group of stakeholders, including both archivists and other types of collection professionals, language professionals, and of course, our tribal partners and depositors. This was a pandemic grant, so we were going to have in-person workshops, but ended up not being able to. So we split our 50 attendees, representing a wide variety of institutions, languages, and collections, into 6 groups for 2-hour workshop sessions that took place in fall 2020. We also had input from our advisory board, and we sent around follow-up surveys to collect some of the data that we're going to share with you today. So first, we talked a lot about searching because searching is one of the core functionalities of the site. If you can't find what you're looking for, then we are doing our job wrong. We want to make it as easy as possible for people to find those things. And while we know from experience of having, visitors come through that people are interested in looking by language, by tribe, and by person, relatives and things like that, we're interested what other kind of things people wanted to search or browse by. So we're of course going to have a keyword search, and then we were going to compile various browse pages, which we got input on what people wanted for that, and then also a detailed search. It was kind of interesting to see what people picked as wanting for the detailed search. They wanted a lot of things, but interest in searching by file type, by genre, interest by map or location, which kind of a surprise to us, were all things that we're definitely incorporating into the new site thanks to this feedback. We got a lot of suggestions, a lot of feedback from the surveys and from the workshops, but just a couple of the things that people brought up that hadn't occurred to us, actually, that we're really excited to have that input for. First, while we have sort of standard OLAC genre tags, we just have like a general kind of pedagogy genre. People really wanted that to be split into for teachers, for students, for families, for administrators, by the function, by who's going to be needing that material, which is a really important thing that would make, our browsing much more useful. Also browsing for movies and popular media, as opposed to just like file format. Browsing by type of song, we have social songs and ceremonial songs and peyote songs and things like that. So organizing songs by genre. A new edition section, which makes a whole lot of sense since we're always getting in and cataloging new material. Here's what's new since last time you checked in. And then perhaps might say Amazon style, you might also like this since you searched for this type of search to facilitate that spontaneous discovery of other similar things. People also were really interested in being able to download all the metadata for individual search results. So, say I want everything on Kiowa, I can then have a metadata list of everything Null has on Kiowa. As well as an ask the archivist help function to kind of answer any kind of questions, or if people are having trouble finding things, that we can get that feedback across multiple pages. As Kavon was saying, another main thing we were really interested in getting feedback on was commenting and how comfortable people were with that. As you can see here, it was pretty evenly split. And, the other caveat here is that people who said yes, allow public commenting, were only okay with that if Null staff were going to moderate or vet in some way the content. A lot of people shared experiences where on Facebook groups and things like that, commenting really got out of hand and got nasty, and we don't want to have to be a place for that. Also, people sort of made the point of, okay, well, what's the benefit? That you rarely get serious engagement with the materials with the public comments. If you browse like the ELP comments, for example, you kind of see that. But we were really interested in, how people will react to this. And ultimately, after these conversations, this is a design feature that we're not going forward with, at least at the moment. However, that's somewhat different from information that's being added to the metadata, or like a transcript or something being added to an item. Obviously, as an archive, we have a lot of interest in getting the best metadata possible. And we know that a lot of people out there know, who people are in these recordings who may not be identified. And we really are interested in getting that information. There was a majority of interest amongst participants in accepting at least some kinds of contributed information. There was it was a little bit surprising to me that some people were very hesitant to, for example, allow others to provide transcripts for their recordings. Also, when it comes to, okay, well, so we don't want to be the final say about what information goes in this record. We'd like to work with you to represent the best of the information for your collection. Who should we go to when people submit information? And got kind of mixed results on that one too. Some people were like, yes, I want to vet my information. Others, particularly linguists actually, were sort of reluctant to be the vetters of that, preferring to send it to the tribe or something like that. Others suggested sort of more complicated tribal workflows. for vetting, depending on what kind of material it is. So sort of at the end of all of this, we're looking at some sort of multi-layered approach that's negotiated with each collection, ideally when it comes in, where for at least little things like spelling corrections, we might be able to do an initial round on that and not send everything up the whole food chain, but that it needs this kind of one-on-one multi-layered approach that is for the most part still to be determined, since people in the workshops didn't really volunteer their best processes. Although, you know, we have this opportunity to develop a website, we probably can't do everything all in one grant, but people provided some excellent ideas about the sorts of things that we should look to do in the future. One of these is an excitement around the local context working group type of labeling, like the traditional knowledge labels and biocultural notices, so that we hope to be able to do a grant to use those more in the future. Most people were interested in seeing Null include web-based viewers for translation and transcripts, or like story readers, things like that, to facilitate pedagogy in collaboration with local language programs, because it would have to be on a kind of a language by language basis. I'm excited about that. Have a publication series for texts and language advocacy work, and also hold workshops for tribes on digital asset management. We do this sort of informally now, but yeah, we could absolutely look into doing that more systematically and comprehensively in the future. We've got positive feedback. You know, thank you for getting our input, appreciation for access. Also, ideas about Null being sort of a nice central place to put this type of material for people looking for it. We'd also asked in the workshops about local distribution points for Null materials, a la, you know, Raspberry Pi and things like that. That was actually met with a surprising lack of interest. It's sort of like, well, if I can access it online through your lovely portal you're developing, why do we, you know, need our own? Which is, yeah, was sort of surprising to us, but you know, it's what people want. So going forward, we've got 3 years on this grant. We're in year 1 right now. We just started. So mostly we're going to be building a website in collaboration with a native web designer and OUIT. One of the things that came out of the workshops very strongly was the need for a welcoming, non-institutional feel for the website. So we're doing our best to deliver on that. Continue developing the archive software with Kavon. Hire some assistants to refine our metadata so that to allow the kinds of searching that our workshop participants were asking for. And to do iterative development with all of our partners. And then finally to disseminate our products when they're finally available, and to keep dialogue open with our communities about, you know, possibilities for the future. So again, we don't have a site yet, but these are some website mock-ups that were done as part of the first grant. So you can kind of get an idea of what we're looking at for item pages and our homepage. And then I wanted to just close with a couple thoughts of things we sort of learned through this process, which is that good design is always iterative and always involves much collaboration from the beginning stages through the end stages. However, grant funding inherently is not. So we've been forced to kind of try and anticipate everything we need now before anyone can see anything, which is, you know, hard. We've allocated, hopefully we'll have the site ready by halfway through this grant and have half to continue looking at it. But that's sort of one of the things you have to keep in mind when planning this kind of project. Also, since technology and ideas and things are always developing, we're hoping that what we're building now will allow additional tools that are developed in the future to kind of plug into our infrastructure, borrow this idea of microservices from the software world, which includes other things like our linguistic software like Lex, Elan, and Lameta. We've actually been in conversations with several tribes already about using the archive side software for their own tribal infrastructure, which is really exciting. You know, if they collaborate with us regularly, that allows for a better exchange of information. It's more compatible. And we're really excited about being able to support them in that way. And we just are very lucky to have this opportunity. One of the things that came out in the archivist discussions in particular was like, man, I really wish we had the chance to build this all again and improve our workflows. And everybody's understaffed and underfunded. And we're just so lucky to be able to have these conversations and actually make them real. So thank you, Aho, Jokmashki, everybody, for listening, and I hope to see you at the conference. Thanks.